Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. My name is Neil Taylor. I'm the Senior Trainer at Creative Hut. For those of you that are new to the course and just joining us for the first time today, Creative Hut are a STEAM education resource and training provider. And one of our key partners is absolutely Makeblock, who we're working in conjunction with in delivering this training course. Now, just to quickly go over what Makeblock are about, what they usually do for those, again, who are new to this. They're actually a company who deal in providing lots of great hands-on education technology. Some of the examples of which you can see on the screen now. They deal in things like robotics, which cater for education from early years all the way up into third and higher education. They also deal in all sorts of great ed tech like 3D printers, laser cutters, and a lot more. There's lots of different opportunities for great hands-on technology through Makeblock. But what all of that goes hand in hand with is their free programming software and, of course, curriculum materials to help you make use of it in the classroom or at home. And what they have developed in conjunction with that is their STEAM on Board program, which is what this course is part of. And the STEAM on Board program as a whole is all about providing lots of ongoing support, guidance and advice to all of the teachers and end users of their resources. So that's online training, face-to-face training, and any general support that the end users might need. But what they've just developed recently as part of this is their STEAM on Board online programming course, which is completely free of charge and is a great tool for everyone to make use of at the moment, because it doesn't require the need for any of the robotics hardware, which is of course a little bit more difficult for people to get their hands on at the moment with the situation that we're in. So this is purely just making use of the free of charge Makeblock programming software, which we're using throughout this course. So again, I'll just quickly go over the full details of this for those that are joining us for the first time today. The course as a whole is actually a total of 12 tutorials for 45-minute lessons. There's a series of 12 45-minute lessons which you can then deliver to your pupils or children that you're working with. We're delivering these over the course of 4 weeks. So for, again, those of you that just joined us today, don't worry, all of the previous sessions have been recorded and are available to you to view back on our YouTube channel. We'll send you the links to all of those after this session, and you'll also be able to access all the lesson materials that go with the recordings to enable you to, again, deliver this to your pupils and children. So that includes lesson materials like slides, lesson plans and example programs, which you'll be seeing as we go through this lesson. Now, I would also encourage you to sign up directly with Makeblock themselves as well. You can see the link here. Again, we'll send this through to you, but you can basically sign up with them to get access to even more live webinars, which might be at a more suitable time for you. You'll also be able to access the lesson plans and slides, example programs from their portal as well. And it also gives you access to their general user community, which is going to be a great platform for uploading and sharing the work that you are creating and see the work that others have done. So it's a great platform for sharing ideas and best practice and seeing what else you could do with your children. And you'll also get the opportunity to provide any feedback that you want on this course and future courses, so you can recommend any changes, adaptations that you'd like to see. And then last but not least, of course, we always need to make sure that we're stressing you'll just need to download or stream the Makeblock 5 programming software. So it's this programming software that all of the lessons are based on, completely free of charge. Again, you can download at this link. We'll send that through to you again after the session. So you can download that onto tablets, laptops, desktops, or you can stream in a browser as well. So you'll all be able to get access to that. But what we're going to be looking at today is lesson number 8, which is called a running bug. So again, for those new to this, these slides I'm now using are exactly the same slides that you'll be provided with and you'll be able to use with your pupils. So I'll be using those slides myself, also doing a little bit of a different style to talk you through exactly what you can do, but these are what you'll be able to use in support of the delivery of the lessons for yourself. Okay, but before we go into the details of lesson 8, well, actually just to give you a quick overview of what we're doing, we are now working working towards the children actually creating games for themselves. So bringing together everything that we've been looking at in the previous 7 lessons and starting to create their own interactive games, which is brilliant. And that's what we've been working towards. I don't know if you remember us playing the Space Adventures game in lesson 1. We're now looking at creating our own game, which is brilliant. But of course, we just always want to give a quick review of what we looked at in the lesson previous to this. So if you remember, lesson 7 was all based around our parrot's travel. So we were creating the animation together with speech and sounds to tell the story of the parrot's travel. So hopefully everyone remembers that. We were making the use of lots of different backgrounds, speech, sounds. We were even starting to bring in new characters that Parrot met along their travel. So hopefully you've been able to have a go at that with some of your children already. But some of the key things that we were looking at again was the use of if-then blocks and conditionals together with the effects type blocks. So hopefully this is starting to ring some bell, but we saw for the first time this if-then block, and we were using the conditional statements like if the mouse pointer was touching the panda would disappear, or if the parrot on its travels, if the parrot was touching the side of the screen, they would bounce back and be redirected the other way. And at the same time, we were getting things to do, things like changing those backgrounds to simulate the places that Parrot was visiting. So hopefully that's, if you're remembering how we're using that, we're using a mix of the animation blocks together with forever loops, if-then blocks, and conditional statements with the center block. So hopefully that is ringing a few bells on what we looked at last time. Again, if not, don't worry, you'll be able to look back at the previous tutorials and lesson plans to refresh our memories on that. And we'll of course be using this in more detail in today's lesson. Okay, so we're going to be doing something again a little bit different. So we've got some brand new characters again to be introduced to. And as I said before, we're starting to work towards creating a game. One of the key characters for the game that we're going to be creating this is this guy here, our bat. Okay, so we're going to be looking at how we can control this bat to create a game. And remember, this is called a running bug. So I hope that's giving you a clue of what we'll be using. We'll be using a bug type character, which we're trying to run away from our bat. That's what we make the basis of our game today. And actually, before we go any further, let's take a look at what you can create. So I'm going to load up the game in a second with a pre-put together program for this. Again, you'll have access to the exact same example program. But you can see it's given a couple of instructions on how to use the game. All it's going to be simply doing is using the up, down, left and right keys on the keyboard to control the movement of the bug or moth. It's going to be a moth that's going to be the other character in the game. And if the moth touches the poisonous bat, it will fall down from the sky and the game will end. Okay, so that's the scenario. So in this, this bat here is a poisonous bat, scary character out in the dark forest here. And if our moth gets too close and touches the bat, unfortunately, the moth is out of the game and the game is over. So we've got to play the game by getting our moth to avoid this bat. Okay, so that's what we're working towards. I'm just going to load up this game for us now. So let's just move my icons around. I think it's the correct one. Yeah, this is the one. Okay. So I won't go into the programming in too much detail at the moment. You can see that I've got my 2 sprites here, bug and bat. So you can see with my bug, I've got lots of programming blocks using those if-then statements. And depending on what is being sensed with the key presses, it's going to do something different. Also, if it touches the bat, it does something again. Hopefully you remember some of these blocks as well, where we're using the X and Y coordinates to position our sprites. And we were also setting the size from the default 100% size to whatever size we want it to be. So hopefully that rings a bell. We'll go into more detail on that in a moment. And then the bats as well, we've got different blocks here, again, making use of the looks blocks, the motion blocks, those forever blocks, and the if, then, and conditional statement blocks. So we've got lots of that. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but that's what's the code behind it. Well, let's look at the game in action. So I'm just going to bring this up full size. I'm going to press green to start the code, and then when you see my moth here moving, that's going to be from me using my up, down, left, right arrows on my keyboard. But off we go. Let's see how I get on. So you can see our bat has now come into the screen. I'm trying as best I can to get the moth or the bug to avoid the bat. Got a little bit close there. So you can see I can try and avoid it as best I can, but eventually I'm gonna, yeah, there we go. So I did touch the bat with my moth, and you can see that has now hidden all the sprites, and the game is over. Okay, so that is how the game works, how we use it, and of course you can challenge the kids to have a go at that and see who can actually get the moth to survive the longest. It might be that if you're working with just 1 or 2 children, you might play against them, seeing if they can get it to last longer than you. If you've got small groups or larger groups of kids you're working with at home, or if you're out in a school that's open at the moment, you can also pair them up and get them to play against each other as well. But that's the first example game and how it works. I also want to look at some of the key points on how this works, what programming is being used, and how they can start to think about using that for themselves. So again, conditionals. This is something we started to look at in the last lesson, but we've done it in a little bit more detail. We've got a few more conditions, and as I just started to talk through there, I was using these different key presses. Depending on what key I pressed, it got the moth to do something different, either move up, down, left, or right, or if it touched the bat, it's just moved down and disappeared. So they were the conditionals we needed to make happen. And the way we were doing that, really similar to what we've been looking at in the past. What the main new block that we brought in was this one, point in direction, which again comes from the motion block area, which we've used a lot before. But this specifies, it's really fairly straightforward. As it sounds, it will decide which direction the sprite is pointing to their moves. You can see the examples here that we could basically control which way the sprite is pointing in a full 360-degree circle, but to the right is positive value, to left is negative value. You'll see this in more detail when I come onto it in a moment. But basically, yeah, so all of this else should seem familiar. Again, using those if-then statements, the conditional for sensing which key is pressed, then what direction we want it to be pointing, either 0 degrees or 180, and how many steps we want it to move. So hopefully that's making sense, but you'll see this in action as we start to go this for ourselves. So we're going to actually start to build up a part of that game that we were looking at. So we were going into those step-by-step guides now, guiding you and the children through how we can start to create this. So I'm going to do exactly that. So our step 1 is to enter the sprite area and delete the sprite panda. Okay, so we're going to start from scratch using a new character rather than the panda. So let's go into that now. I'm just going to start a new file away from that game, so I don't need to save what I've been doing there. But again, so remember, I need to make sure I'm in my sprites section here. We're not going to be using panda today, so I can just delete panda straight out like so. But I want to find my bug sprite. So again, if you all remember, I'll just go back quickly. So you can bring in a new sprite. We're simply just clicking on the add icon here, and I can just search for the one that I want. I know it's going to be bug 2. So this little moth here, so I can bring that in. Okay, like so. I actually want them to start a little bit further down on the stage area, about here. So, okay, so that's first step 1. I've got my bug. Oh, sorry, I just jumped ahead a little bit there. So I've gone and done step 2 as well. But step 3, we now want to bring in that other sprite. So we also want to bring in the bat sprite. So I can again just simply go and do that by adding in again, searching for bats. We've got a few different ones here that you could use, but I'm going to use the suggested one here. Bat one, you can see straight away as well. Again, we've got the different costumes for this sprite. So we've got those 2 different costumes, which makes it look like it's flying, just as a reminder on how we can do that with the sprites. I'm also going to bring the bat a little bit further over my stage area like so. And then next step is going back to the bug and starting to create the code. So you can see that if step 4 through to step 7, I just need these 3 blocks for my code. Okay, so I can just start bringing that up. So I'm going to go back to my bug, my events tab for getting my when green flag clicked. I'm going to just bring that into my script area. Now into control, I also needed that forever block, and in there it wants me to place that if then conditional block. Okay, so that's step 4 through to 7. Next, we're again bringing in a conditional block from our sensing block palette. So you can see here that I want the key up arrow press. If key up arrow press, then do something. So just go to my sensing blocks area here. I'm bringing in my where is it? There it is. Oh, Mike. So by default, it's gone to key space bar, but I want to change that to up arrow like so. And then we're going into how we want it to move. Okay, so this is where we start to bring that new block that we've just been looking at, the point in direction. I want it to be changed to 0, which will mean it will be pointing upwards in that stage area. But let me just explain this in a bit more detail. So I'm going to go to my motion area here, and point in direction about halfway down is here. And you can see if I click on the value, I get this circle come up. So see, at the moment, it means it would be pointing, this bright is pointing to the right of the stage area. If I move this, I could get it to point 135, 150, 180, which means it would be pointing down to the bottom of the stage area. Now you can see I'm going into negative. So that's what I was talking about before, that to the right of the stage area is positive, to the left of the stage area is negative. Hopefully you can see here, I've got that negative symbol come up on the value here. But again, I can go all the way around to minus 90, minus 45, whatever I need to be, whatever's right for the particular code. So I can just go round and around the circle, getting the sprite to be pointing in different directions. But for this, I want it to be pointing 0. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Something that was going to be used a lot in this particular program. But what I also wanted to do is not just point in that direction, but I want to get it to move in that direction. So hopefully everyone remembers the move steps, which again is just moving so many pixels on that stage area. So I'm going to bring that in as well. Defaults to 10, but we just want it to be moved 5 steps like so. And last but not least, we need to basically repeat this. So we've got that first section where if up arrow is pressed, then point up and move 5 steps up. But I also want it to do the exact same thing for down. So if the down arrow is pressed, then I want it to point 180 degrees down to the bottom of the screen and move. And if it actually touches the bat, then I want it to again point down but move 100 steps. I basically want it to fall, disappear right down to the bottom of the screen. So hopefully that's making sense. But also what I want to do, rather than actually drag all this in from scratch, you might remember we looked at how we can just duplicate blocks, which we're going to be using in a similar way to then edit. So rather than just dragging these in again from scratch, I can just hover my hand over here, right click and say duplicates. Okay, so now it's giving me those same blocks, which I can just pop in here again. Same again, duplicates, and put them in here. So now I've got the basis for these ones here to create these different parameters. Hopefully that makes sense. But now I can just change this to key down arrow. But this time, if I press the key down arrow, I don't want to be pointing up 0. I want to be pointing down 180 down to the bottom of the stage area. But I still want it to be moved 5 steps. Then the other thing I want to do is if it touches the bat, so if it touches this sprite, I want to do something different. So to enable that, I want to go into my sensing section here and now actually change it to touching. Okay, so rather than it being key up arrow, I can just drag that out and delete it like so. Bring in my touching conditional block, change that to bat. So that's that bat sprite, which is this one here or this one here. So hopefully again that's making sense. This time again, if it does touch the bat, I want it to point down to the bottom of the 180. So that's the way that the sprite is going to be pointing to move. And this time, rather than 5 steps, I want it to be 100 steps. I hope you can all imagine what's going to happen if it moves 100 steps. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. But let's see this in action by pressing the green flag. Okay, so let's make this bigger. Green flag. So now I'm going to start pressing those up and down arrows. So you can see the moth is moving up and down like I've asked it to do. At the moment, the bat is just staying stationary because we've not programmed it to move at all yet. We've not done any program whatsoever to the bat yet. But if I just put this up, so watch out for what happens to the moth if it now touches the bat. So I'm going to bring it towards the bat. You see it jumped quite a lot, 100 down all to the bottom. So because it's touching that poisonous bat, it's bouncing quite far away down to the bottom screen. So I hope that's making sense on how we're controlling that moth to react to the bat. Okay, hopefully everyone's happy with that. Again, I'll be sharing these example programs with you so you can look back at these and understand them in more detail, use them as a reference point. But next step is learning how we can stop scripts. Okay, so a really important part of a game that we're building up. If something happens, to end the game, we want everything else within the game to end or to stop. Okay, so that's where this new block comes into its into importance. Okay, so stop scripts. This enables to make something stop to end the game once a particular condition has met. And it's really, again, straightforward. You'll find it in the control area. You can see it just says stop all, which means to stop all scripts. Everything in the game, everything in the program will stop. That is the end of the game. So we'll be looking at how we can use that shortly as well. Okay, so now it is giving us that step-by-step guide on how we can start to program the bat. Okay, so you can see now it's asking us to select the bat sprites within our stage area. But I'm not going to go through this step by step. You can see it is giving you the full guide on exactly what you need to build up. And we're now using, rather than just the point in direction, we're also using some motion to set rotation style. If you again remember that from the previous lesson, but it's building us all the way up to step 10 to bring in that code for the bat. But again, you'll be able to look at this and work through this step by step with your kids. So I'm not going to go through that all the way through. I'm actually just going to bring in an example code, which is this one here. We'll make sure you've got access to it as well. But this is basically the example of exactly what it was asking you to do step by step in that on the slides. Okay, so you can see now if I'm on my bat sprite here, I've now got that new code set within it. Okay, so again, we're using that point in certain direction. We've also got the set rotation style left to right, which is going to determine what it will do if it touches the edge of the screen. And if you remember, we're also now using that if on edge bounce, which was the exact same coding block we were using with Parrot in the Parrot's Travel. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense. If you look back on the bug, we've still got that same code for the up down arrow as we used last time. It's always about bringing in this new code to make the bat move within the code as well. Okay, but let's just see this in action as well. The green flags, you can see now that bat is moving up and down, but that time it was a bit more tricky for me to get out of the way. Let's just try that again. So you can see that I'm still able to control the moth up and down like so, but this time, yeah, if it touches the bat, it's still dropping down the screen, just being poisoned by the bat. Okay, so I hope that's making sense on how we start to get that bat to move. Okay, so using again that point in direction, but using that set rotation style, so it is rotating left to right across the screen, but pointing in a 45 direction arrow as it does it. And each time it hit the edge of the screen, it was bouncing back the other way. Okay, and then of course what happened, you could see that if it was touching the bug, then it made use of that stop all script. Every time the bug touched it, it was stopping all the scripts and the game was over. So just look back at that one more time, set it off in motion. There we go. So it's moving around, and then it is stopping once I've hit it. Oh, it's going on a little bit at the moment. There we go. So it's now stopped the scripts after waiting for 1 second to do that. Okay, so you're touching the bug, wait for 1 second, and then stop all scripts. Simple as that. Okay, so now we're going to start to move on to something a little bit different. And it's going to encourage us to actually start creating the game for ourselves. Okay, so you notice in those first couple examples, it was just getting used to how we program the different sprites, the bat and the bug. But it wasn't really looking like the full game, was it? We didn't have any of the backgrounds. The moth was the same size as the bat, so we could start to adapt it to create the game like you saw in the first example when I was playing the game for myself. So that is what they now need to start working towards, and you can at this point hand over to them to start practicing and creating the game for themselves. And it sets out a few example requirements, but basically they, even at this point, can get as creative as they want and develop the game how they see fit. They're basically aiming to create something similar to what they were having a go at in the practice at the beginning of this lesson. But some of the few basic requirements are that the moth always appears at the bottom left of the stage area every time the game begins. Okay, so that if you just look back at this, we always want the moth to start here. So hopefully you're already thinking about how we do that, or the kids will be thinking how we do that. That'll be making use of that X and Y coordinates block that we looked at in the last lesson. So they can start to think about how they would need to use that. When the game starts, the bat will start flying after 1 second, so the little moth has time to get ready. So that's simply using those delay blocks or the wait for blocks that you find in the control section. And then in order to animate the effect of flying, different costumes of the bat have to be shifted continuously while flying. So that, remember, we want to be able to get the bat to look like it was flying. And the way we do that is using those next costume blocks, which again, we've looked at a lot in the previous lessons, in the Parrot's Travel, in the penalty kick, in the Panda's Race. So they've had lots of experience with using that. So again, this is really starting to get towards them using all of those different programming blocks they've used in the previous lessons, bringing it all together to create the game. Okay, so what they could do is build that up from scratch, or developing what they've done in those previous steps. And we want them to be quite open-ended and to see what they can create. But again, if they are struggling, you will have that example program from the previous game, which they can use as a reference point to look at, and maybe even use as a starting point before adapting further. For you as the teacher or the parent, you also have this reference fully in the lesson plan. So this is the lesson plan for this particular lesson, and when we're going into this stage, it is reminding you step by step on how you can create all of this. So these are step by steps using those X and Y coordinates block, setting the size from 100% to 30%, reminding you how you can get the forest night background. So there is a lot of support if you and the kids need this to help you build up that program. But I think at this stage, they can definitely be at least given the opportunity to see if they can put it together themselves. So hopefully that is making sense. But then, of course, the next step after that is the extension task. So this, again, I think they'll start to naturally do at this stage as they're building up the full game in itself. They'll want to experiment, they'll want to see what else they can get, and just let them do that. Let them explore, see what they can create. But it does give a couple of example extensions or upgrades, missions for the game. So it is suggesting using display and hide blocks so that both sprites disappear once the game is over. That's just one example. They can do whatever they want, whatever they think is going to improve the game. So I just want to show you quickly again an example of how I've done this, what I've done for extension. So I'm going to load up a new program again now. So it's this one here. So I don't need to save what I've been working on. So this is my adaptations to the games. Again, you'll see this looks really familiar from what we were playing in the first game. Got my Forest Night background again. I've got my different codes for the bat, which I won't talk through yet. You can see this is my code for the bat. This is my code for the bug, which hopefully does look a little bit similar. I see you might be seeing some of the adaptations just already, but I'm going to play the game, show you what I did to change this, and see if you can spot them, or I'll talk through them after this. Okay, so here we go, pressing green, and the game is off. So I'm going to try my best to try and avoid the bat. Oh, got a bit too close there, but I won't. Oh, let's go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's play that one more time so you can see exactly what happens. Play again. Okay, we'll talk over this time. Okay, so I'll stop it there. So hopefully you could see the adaptations that I made there. What I decided to do for my game was bring in some sound effects and some speech on the screen. So you can see within the bug sprite here, if touching bats, you might have noticed that that oops, game over type sound. That was this one here, so that play sound block I brought in to play once the bug did touch the bats, before then disappearing to the bottom of the screen and hiding that script. So I just brought in that to help bring the end of the game to life. And then the same with the bats. What I also want to do is bring in some speech. So you might have seen it saying this on the screen to signify that he had caught the moth and ended the game. Okay, so hopefully that's making sense of what I did to adapt and change the game. Again, I'm sure the people will have lots and lots of great ideas on what they can do to bring the game to life even more. So they just encourage them to try that in lots of different ways. Okay, so hopefully that is making sense. Of course, as always, the important part, once they've made the changes to the game, created all of that, get them to share what they've done, ask them to talk you through what they've done to the game, why they've done it, why they think it's great, and maybe even get you to have a go at playing the game to see if you like the usability of it and the experience, and properly share all that work with you. But of course, before we wrap up, we've also got that important quiz time just to check that they have consolidated the learning on some of the blocks. So we'll go through these few questions on our quiz straight away now. So as always, if you just imagine to yourself what you think the answer to this question is, and I will reveal in a moment. So it's simply, from the 4 following options, which block can stop the action of all sprites? So something that we looked at right at that lesson. I'm sure everyone's got the answer to this. It is, of course, A. So stop all. If we want to stop everything happening within the game, we want to stop all. You can see there are different options we can use to stop certain things within the game, within the program. But to get everything to stop, we always need to use that stop all block. Question number 2. Which block combination is used to animate the effect that the character is falling down from the air? So like we've just been seeing in the game, at the end of the game, if the moth touched the bat, it would fall downwards. Which of these 4 options would make that happen? So just give you a few seconds to look over those programming sequences. Which one of these 4 ones do we think is the correct one? Is, of course, B. Okay, so we want the moth to point downwards. 180 was getting the sprite to point downwards, and to move 5 steps repeatedly until it was right at the bottom of the screen. That's the only one of those that would get that to happen, because of course these ones, there is no loop block, so this one would get it to point downwards and move 5 steps once, and that would be it. It wouldn't look as if it was falling, it would just move really slightly. This one would actually be, it gave away by gave away the answer to the next one there just by mistake. This one would just get it to point towards the right of the screen. And again, this one will get it to point to the right of the screen and repeat that. It's only this one which would get it to point down to the bottom of the screen and keep moving to give that falling down from the air effect. Okay, so apologies, you might have seen the answer to this one again, but if you can take a quick look at this program, so you can read the program and answer the below question. When pressing the key C, so the key C on your keyboard, what will the character say? So if you look over these different if-then conditional statements, which of these, when pressing the key C, what will the character say? It is, of course, A. So this one here, when pressing key C, it will say A. Okay, so that's what happens. It's kind of like the up, down, left arrow movement conditions we were looking at in the game. That will get the character to say A. Okay, and then last but not least, if you can take a quick scan of the programs here, and which key press do you think will realize the effect of stop all running programs immediately? So again, we want all programs to be stopped. Which key press would be needed to be executed to make that happen? What key press will stop all scripts? I think it's really self-explanatory in this one. It is, of course, the right arrow. Okay, so you can see you've got lots of different arrow presses, but this one here, when right arrow key pressed, it will say D and stop all scripts. Okay, so it is that right arrow key press. Okay, so hopefully you got all those right. That is the end of the quiz and the end of this particular lesson. So thank you very much again for joining us. Hope you found that useful and you are looking forward to getting your children creating and playing their own games. What we've been building towards, and it's a great lesson for them. Also, we'll be expanding on this even more in the next few lessons to come as well. But thank you very much again for joining. As always, if you've got any questions as you start to use us, please do get in touch with us. You can reach us on our email address here, info@creative-hut.com. We will be sending you through the video to this and all the previous lessons together with the lesson materials, so the slides, lesson plans, and example programs that you've seen in this. If you want to join in any of the other future lessons or anything else that Creative Hut is doing, look out for those on our social media channels. And if you want to share any of the work that you're doing, please do tag us in these as well. We will see you online again very soon. Lesson 9 is coming tomorrow. So please feel free to join that if you wish. And but yeah, thank you very much again for joining. But bye for now. Thank you very much.